Dutiable Commodities Amendment Bill 2017.
This Council resumes the second reading debate on the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. Dr. Wai-kwok, Chairman of the Bills Committee on the bill, will address the Council on the committee's report. Dr. Wai-kwok. President, as Chairman of the Bills Committee on Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017, I submit the report of the Bills Committee to the Council and report the work of the committee. The objective of the bill is to amend the Waterworks Ordinance and Waterworks regulations so that workers of specific trade divisions and persons under instruction and supervision of specified workers under the Construction Workers Registration Ordinance can carry out specified plumbing works. The bill also prescribes the liabilities of the licensed plumbers and supervisors with regards to specified plumbing works. The Bills Committee support the delineation of roles, participation, and liabilities of persons involved in specific plumbing works, including licensed plumbers and plumbing workers. One of the areas of concern of members is the liability of plumbing workers and defense provision. According to the existing Section 14(4) of the WWO, anyone who contravenes WWO Section 14(3) on the construction or installation of fire service or inside service commits an offense. The bill recommends the addition of a new Section 14(5) as a defense provision, which provides that it is a defense for a person, including a worker who is charged with an offense under the proposed Section 14(4)(b) of WWO, to establish that he or she believed that carrying out the plumbing works would not contravene Section 14(3) of WWO, and it was reasonable for him or her to so believe. Some members feel that the drafting of the new defense provision cannot alleviate plumbing workers' worries effectively, because a plumbing worker carrying out plumbing works which contravene Section 14(3) of WWO cannot easily prove that it was reasonable for him or her to believe that carrying out the plumbing works would not contravene the WWO. These members suggested the administration to consider amending the bill to specify that if a non-compliance is found in a plumbing project, workers will not be prosecuted for an offense unless they have deliberately not followed the instruction of their instructing supervisors when carrying out the works. On members' views, the administration will move amendments on the proposed Section 14(4) of WWO to specify that certain plumbing workers and practitioners would only be held liable if they knowingly breach Section 14(3). Another area of focus from members is the time limit for prosecutions. The bill proposes that any prosecution under the WWO may be brought within a period of 6 months from the date on which the offense is discovered by or comes to the notice of the Water Authority. However, the date of committal of offense is not subject to a time limit for prosecutions. This means that if a plumbing system is found to be non-compliant a long time after installation, the relevant licensed plumbers will still be held liable. Members and the trade are of the view that since after the plumbers install the pipes, there might be alterations to the pipes caused by other people, and as such they might be held liable, and such provision is unfair to practitioners. The government accepted the views of the trade and members and moved amendments to prescribe that prosecutions on the relevant plumbing works on contraventions of WWO Section 14(3) might not be brought 6 years after the relevant date. The bill prescribes that non-designated persons can carry out alterations of repairs of fire service or inside service deemed of a minor nature by the WA. Members are concerned how the government would let the trade and public know about the definition of works of a minor nature. The administration stated that the Water Supplies Department has issued circular letters to licensed plumbers, and they also publish general principles and examples of works of a minor nature on the WSD website. The administration finds the existing practice flexible and effective. Members feel that the definition of works of a minor nature should be set up clearly in the legal provisions. On this, the administration accepted members' proposal and will move amendments to define the relevant work. Works that would affect the efficiency of the water supply system and quality of water would not be deemed works of a minor nature. In terms of the enforcement of the ordinance, to help plumbing workers understand their roles and liabilities under the amended WWO so that they would not fall into legal traps, members have examined the draft guidelines from the government for the public and practitioners. The administration stated that they would work with the relevant labor unions to hold briefings and publish pamphlets to promote the relevant laws. Over the course of deliberations, members examined the continual education or professional development programs for plumbing practitioners. The administration said that the Development Bureau has been working with the Construction Industry Council and Vocational Training College to organize CPD courses for plumbing practitioners, and they would continue to help enhance their skills and knowledge. President, here are my personal views on the bill.
Madam Deputy, in terms of our existing regulatory regime on waterworks and plumbing, and also the responsibility of licensed plumbers and the Water Authority, these are subject to the regulations under Cap 102A, Waterworks regulations, as well as Waterworks Ordinance. Under the existing Section 15(1) of the Waterworks Ordinance, except for minor alterations or repairs, the fire service or inside service may only be constructed, installed, maintained, altered, repaired, or removed by a licensed plumber or public officer authorized by the Water Authority. However, what happens in reality is that the mode of operation of the trade for decades has been that with the help of licensed plumber, the workers would take up such work. Well, since one summer, it was found that the level of lead was found to be in exceedance in certain housing estates. The then chief executive decided to set up a commission of inquiry into excess lead found in drinking water to conduct a comprehensive inquiry at different levels on the cause of excess lead found in water, drinking water, to consider whether our regulatory regime was sound and to make recommendations to change the law. This is in line with some of the recommendations put forward by the Commission to update the out-of-date provisions. For example, in relation to registered plumbing workers under Cap 583, the Construction Workers Registration Ordinance, they would be allowed to conduct installation and maintenance of the system in a lawful manner. On the other hand, the plumbing trade, general public, etc., and other stakeholders would understand clearly the objective of the law. At the same time, through effective enforcement, the Water Authority can further ensure the quality of drinking water. The Bills Committee held 6 meetings. Apart from discussing with the administration, the Bills Committee also received views from deputations. Now, on the views expressed by the Bills Committee and the questions put forward by the legal advisor of the Bills Committee, the administration has proposed a number of amendments. The Bills Committee has no objection to these committee stage amendments. The Bills Committee will not move its own amendments either at the committee stage. It shows that there is a basic consensus reached between the trade and the community as a whole. With passage of the bill will come into operation as appointed by the Secretary on a date as appointed by the Secretary for Development. However, the bill will come into operation on a date as published in the Gazette. Owing to the present circumstances, we should implement the measure as soon as possible to rectify the situation that workers are not legally allowed to carry out the works. And I think that it should be implemented as soon as possible. But before it comes into operation, there should be clear guidelines published so that the trade can also implement supporting measures. According to the Commission of Inquiry into excess lead found in the drinking water's recommendations, the Water Authority and the Water Supply Department should, by way of legislation, specify the roles and responsibilities of different parties, such as the contractor, developer, and the authorized persons in the taking part in the installation, etc., of an inside service. The Bills Committee notes that in relation to the WWO and WWR's amendments, depending on the severity of the matter and after consulting the stakeholders, amendments will be carried out in phases. At the Bills Committee, I pointed out that there is a requirement from the administration for the workers to go through vocational training before registration is allowed. I don't think this is feasible, but in the long term, we should enhance the skills and knowledge of the workers. In fact, there is a strong demand from the community for the administrations to step up regulation of the plumbing trade, and the administration should deploy more resources and to build a more comprehensive career ladder, so that more plumbing professionals can be groomed. In 2015, after the excess lead was found in drinking water, the relevant policy bureaus and government departments have actively followed up on the recommendations and implemented a lot of measures. Last September, a scheme was launched to take action to ensure the quality of drinking water in Hong Kong, with a number of initiatives. For example, reviewing the regulatory regime of drinking water in Hong Kong, and this legislative amendment is one important step that is worthy of our support.
Livelihood issues are certainly important, and the safety of drinking water is a key aspect. So in the 2017 to 18 policy address from the chief executive, she pointed out that the administration must be focused in its approach on the lead in water incidents. It must refine the existing systems and enhance the supervision of water quality. More resources should be given to train up Waterworks experts on different levels, and the practitioners should be well qualified to make sure that Hong Kong's drinking water standards are up to scratch. And this would instill confidence in the public. And as such, I urge members to support the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, President. Dr. Lena Wong. Madam Deputy, 2.5 years ago, we had the lead in water incidents in 11 public housing estates. The lead levels were excessive, and that involved more than 29,000 households and families. The lead in water incidents was against the long-standing belief that our drinking water is safe. We needed to examine our water supply system from source to tap. We must ensure the safety of drinking water so that the public has access to clean and safe water. Recently, LegCo passed an item of subsidiary legislation, and that is the Waterworks regulations to update the standards on the plumbing parts and pipes so that there is lesser risk of contamination. Today we are to pass the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017, and this is to align the gaps between the current ordinance and the reality. According to Cap 102, with the exception of works or installations or alterations of a minor nature, fire service or inside service, only licensed plumbers or the water authority, that is the Director of Water Supplies, and their authorized officers may take part in the construction, installation, alteration, or removal of a plumbing system. Even though such arrangements are in place and the persons that can carry out the works have been specified, but in recent decades, not only licensed plumbers carried out the work, because we do not have enough LPs in Hong Kong to take up all the plumbing works in Hong Kong. So in reality, we are not able to stick with the existing legislation, and as such, a lot of practitioners would be deemed illegal in their works. So we have always had licensed plumbers and plumbing workers. So we need to make the relevant legal changes. For the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017, I was Vice Chairman of the Bills Committee, and we have been in discussions with the government. We are to make certain amendments, apart from minor amendments. For construction, installation, alteration, or removal of a plumbing system of fire service or inside service, or what we call specified plumbing works, they can be carried out by licensed plumbers and authorized officers. They can also be carried out by persons such as registered plumbing workers, provisional, or persons who carry out specified plumbing works under the instruction and supervision of an LP or registered plumbing worker. So in other words, they are trying to legalize the existing arrangement. So I'm sure this is this would be readily understood by the public. The bill does not just specify the persons who can carry out specified plumbing works. It also prescribes the liabilities of the relevant persons and whether they should be held criminally liable. We had discussions at the Bills Committee on the liabilities of plumbing workers and LPs. We had open hearing sessions at the Bills Committee, and we heard from the plumbing trade, and eventually the administration took some of the views on board, and they introduced a defense provision. I think this is a logical step to go. The purpose of amending the ordinance is not to penalize these workers, our goal is instead to safeguard water safety. So we have to deal with the liabilities of workers. So with this new defense provision, we find the arrangement satisfactory. The Democratic Party is also concerned for workers because they need to receive enough training and they must have enough knowledge in order to not breach the laws. So at the Bills Committee, we asked the administration to provide ample training. So for plumbing workers, especially licensed plumbers, they must constantly upgrade themselves and enroll in continuing professional development programs and keep abreast of the latest regulatory requirements. That way, they would not fall into legal traps, and also to ensure the safety of drinking water and the health of the public. At the end of 2016, in around October, a continuing professional development program for licensed plumbers was launched, and the response among LPs was positive, and they welcomed such courses. However, these courses are still voluntary in nature, and I have told the WSD and Development Bureau that in the early stages it's okay for the programs to be voluntary, but you should make such programs compulsory step by step. The DP hopes that the WSD would talk to the licentiate committee for licensed plumbers, and LPs should be given support, and they should be required to take mandatory courses during license renewal. LPs must be trained with the relevant knowledge and skills for the specified or designated workers we mentioned. They also require constant upgrade of knowledge and skills, or else they might inadvertently breach the laws, and this would be unfair to both the workers and the public. So hopefully the government can support the trade in this. In the past, we emphasized the technical aspects of the works, but we did not consider the impacts of the works on water quality. So the relevant knowledge must be updated. In recent times, we learned that lead in water had to do with the soldering material, and recently we found that it's not just about soldering materials, and during soldering they would use resin in the soldering works, and even the trade does not know how resin could be used. So such techniques and knowledge should be up to date. And when they use the resin, the workers don't even refer to the manual. According to the manual, you cannot apply too much resin to the copper joints, and some workers even use their fingers to apply the resin. So for highly acidic resin, they could only be applied outside the pipes rather than inside, but a lot of workers would apply resin both inside and outside. So at the end, we end up with too much resin, and that would generate a lot of copper compounds, and the WSD is not aware, let alone the Development Bureau. And I received complaints from residents. They complain about blue and green particles at their pipes. So I like to, so I asked which soda paste they use and how the workers deal with the material. So such courses are necessary. If you make them optional and you would renew their licenses no matter what, that is a problem. So even with laws, we cannot ensure the safety of drinking water. So if we do not follow the standards or the manuals, if we are unaware of international waterworks standards, well, the international authorities raise some new standards. For copper, you did not pay attention to the use of soda paste. So the government should have experts on water quality to help the government monitor water safety. So mandatory training courses are needed to ensure the safety of our water. For plumbing workers, they should receive enough protection. If they are not in the know, they might inadvertently breach the laws. Even though you are providing a defense, they might not be held culpable. But to protect worker safety and the safety of drinking water, mandatory training programs are needed. When scrutinizing the bill, I doubted why the ordinance only applies to LPs and specified plumbing workers. And during the plumbing works, very often these specified persons will only carry out the execution. For bigger buildings, the LPs or plumbing workers are not involved in the construction or design. They are carried out by other professionals, especially building services engineers.
And they have nothing to do with licensed plumbers and licensed plumbing workers. So we cannot just regulate the LPs and also registered workers. We also have to tackle the developers, the principal contractor, the plumbing works contractor, architects, building service engineer. All these professionals should also be regulated, and the liabilities of all relevant APs, authorized persons, should be addressed. However, this bill mainly targets workers and not all these professionals, so it is very unfair to frontline workers. We had a long debate in the Bills Committee, and the government's reply is, we'll first work on the workers, the plumbing workers first, and then very soon they are going to regulate or amend the law to regulate other professionals. They will conduct a public consultation. Well, I saw the secretary nod his head because he promised to do this. Now, because the problem doesn't lie just with workers, professionals are involved. If we just regulate the workers are not the relevant professionals, we have not solved the problem, because these professionals are responsible for teaching workers how to use the flux and soda paste. If they have taught the workers to use such materials wrong, they should be held responsible. We urge the administration to work on this ASAP. We support the amendments. Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Madam Chair, I speak to support the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. The bill seeks to follow up on the recommendations made by the Commission of Inquiry into excess lead found in drinking water under the new standards. I'm sure there can be more effective protection of water quality, quality of water supplied to people. It will more effectively regulate the construction, installation, maintenance, alteration, and repair of construction of plumbing works. The responsibility of workers are at stake. Of course, according to the administration, it is not seeking to exert extra liability and responsibility on workers. However, Clause 14 of the bill has set out the restrictions for plumbing workers, and it can easily catch workers inadvertently. I'm pleased that the administration has noted our concern. It is willing to amend the law to provide defenses for workers to enhance protection for them. I hope that soon after the implementation of the bill, a report can be submitted by the administration through this council so that we can be briefed on the status of implementation and to know whether workers have been inadvertently caught and be held liable. And the administration should also review the qualifications of plumbing workers and widely publicize the new provisions to let them understand their liabilities under the bill. To enhance the quality of the construction, installation, and maintenance of our plumbing works, we must step up training. Now, the license for plumbing workers is 1 year, but there is a 5-year transitional period so that existing workers will not lose their qualifications so easily. Although this is not directly relevant to the bill, we have to ensure that plumbing workers can upgrade their skills in a timely manner to enhance protection for the public. There is still a lot for the government to do in improving the skills and knowledge of our workers. Thank you. Mr. Horace Lau. Thank you. I speak to support the administration's Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. We had the excess lead in water in PRH estates that aroused great concern in the community, and we welcome the administration's proposed amendments to the Waterworks Ordinance so that by means of regulation can ensure that people who are involved in our plumbing works can ensure that our water quality is safe for consumption. Now, for authorized public officers and also waterworks and semi-skilled and skilled workers can also undertake waterworks, and under the supervision of registered workers or licensed plumbers, other people can also carry out plumbing works. I understand that it was not so easy to achieve these consensus because different stakeholders have come to meet us to reflect our views. There was a public hearing by the Bills Committee. I think there's been sufficient communication between the government and various sectors. When the bill was first introduced, many organizations representing plumbing workers were very worried. Ordinary workers might not be as professionally trained as semi-skilled and skilled workers. They have not passed the relevant examination and tests, and they might use the wrong materials or do it in the wrong way in carrying out plumbing works, and that can jeopardize water safety. the administration has given us a very detailed explanation after we've raised our concerns. It said that ordinary workers will only carry out very low-skilled, repetitive work steps, and they can only do so under the supervision of professionals within specified areas. They will be supervised and also directed by professionals as to how to carry out their work. So, in the choice of plumbing materials and soldering materials, these will be done by licensed plumbers or semi-skilled or skilled workers who are experienced in their work, so that there won't be any possibility of affecting water safety or quality of water by these ordinary workers. Some skilled and semi-skilled workers acting as supervisors will enhance their knowledge, experience, and help them to move up their career ladder. And in the past decades, it's really the practice for ordinary workers to carry out plumbing works under the supervision of experienced or professional workers. So this is an existing practice. We are just formalizing it and with conditions imposed. And ultimately, a consensus was reached with the industry. The administration's explanation has allayed the concerns of the community and the industry. These amendments has given very clear definitions for people involved in plumbing works, and therefore we're willing to support the government's CSAs to prevent such incidents to happen again. We cannot just work on regulation of workers. I think the government understands full well they are not using this single bill to follow up on the incident of excess lead found in water incident. I understand that they have taken many steps and done a lot to improve things. They have just started to work on this problem. Whether their measures will take effect leaves to be seen. Yes, it is important that only safe materials are used, because if the materials are contaminated, people's health will be jeopardized. We are happy to see that for internal water services system and fittings and pipes of fire service, I'm pleased to see that they are going to move a bill, or in fact they have already introduced a bill to the council and is being scrutinized by a bills committee. I want the bills committee to complete its work very soon so that we can ensure water safety using a multi-pronged approach. This morning, I was at a district council meeting, and the director of Waterworks was there to visit the district council, and he gave a very detailed presentation of the works of the work of the Waterworks department. I'm sure all government departments with involvement in water supply will not just mind their own business. There should be coordination among these departments so that they can, with concerted efforts, work to ensure water safety for us. This is most important. I hope that the administration can complete the proposed amendment work as soon as possible so that we can ensure that our water pipes are safe, and we should legislate to penalize suppliers of unsafe waterworks materials. I hope that the administration has heard our views, and I think this is also the right way forward. And to supplement, now this Development Bureau is the relevant bureau for this bill. Very often when we have an incident, the government will introduce new guidelines, and that was what happened to the excess lead found in drinking water incident. I hope that the administration can look at the whole system and see how we can simplify some of the steps and enhanced surveillance in other steps, because I'm worried that every time we have an incident, there will be new guidelines, and more guidelines will be promulgated. For instance, in a construction site worker, to avoid accidents, workers are required to wear safety helmets. And when there is an accident, the government may ask workers to wear yet another safety helmet. Does that make workers safer? Now, if there are further incidents, a worker may have to wear 5, 6 safety helmets. In fact, I was told that at construction sites, there are more foremen and supervisors than construction workers. So the neck of a construction worker might be hurt by too many safety helmets. So this is not unique to Waterworks issues, but to other issues as well. If you just look at the bill itself, it's perfectly okay. When it comes to actual operation, the supervisors may just go and take a look and then sign as their approval. And the signatory, in fact, has very clear-cut liabilities and responsibilities. So such a system may help, but we should review the whole system.
To see what you need to add to the existing framework and what you need to take away from different government departments which might be having their resources overlapped, which might not be coordinated. So I hope that with the passage of the bill, we can then review the situation when it is actually implemented, whether things are as ideal as we thought. Everything may sound rosy at this moment, but we need to put it to a test on site. How much time is spent on, say, supervising the works? We need to have answers to that, and I'm sure that the Secretary will attach great importance to the safety of water after a spate of incidents that happened. I so submit, Madam Deputy, I support the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017 and the amendments. Dr. Priscilla Leung. Madam Deputy, I speak in support of the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. The origin of the amendment is that in summer 2015, there was a scandal involving excess lead found in drinking water. The matter at one time was escalated, and some rather radical incidents happened. For example, government officials during visits to the districts were asked to drink these the water with excess lead found in it. And even private buildings and housing estates had a scare whether excess lead was equally found in drinking water. We all had responsibility of following up on the matter. And for the housing estate, Kai Ching estate, where the incident was first exposed? Well, in fact, I served the residents there, and I am familiar with them. And then in Kowloon West, in Hong Ham Estate, Kowloon, and other housing estates in Kowloon West, all the district councillors in these constituencies are familiar to me. So, in fact, it started as a rather mild case, and then it became a scare, especially when doctors referred to children and pregnant women living in these housing estates. It then became a major scare. Regarding this amendment bill, it has come too late, I'm afraid, but I understand that this is always how the government works. When something happens, the government will then review the situation, and then the COI, Commission of Inquiry, was set up, and according to the COI report, it was said that after implementing the WWO since 1975, no amendment has ever been made. In terms of materials containing lead and the standards for other materials, active follow-up action is being taken by a lot of members, and I'm happy to see that, because there are higher social expectations on the standard of materials. And in fact, we do have a very high threshold in terms of level of lead in water, and yet we can't abide by such a high standard. And I can say that this stir up a public scare. And in fact, in the Legislative Council, I also mentioned that we should not allow this incident to become the Lehman Brothers of drinking water. And I say that we should follow up on the matter in the short, medium, and long term. Of course, in the short to medium term, with pressure exerted by this council and the public, the developer, or rather the contractor, very swiftly replaced the filters in the household units to address the issue in the short term. But apart from installing filters, one also has to replace the core of the filters regularly. And I, in fact, asked residents living in Kaixing Estate whether follow-up action has been taken, and indeed follow-up action has been taken, and water pipes have also been replaced. So in a short period of time, for these housing estates, according to the situation that we monitored, follow-up action has indeed been taken. Now, for medium-term improvement, legislative amendment, namely, indeed, we have dealt with the issue of plumbers. Well, at that time, we, including the government, seem to have passed the buck to frontline licensed plumbers. And they also insisted that they should not bear the sole responsibility. We should be fair to all stakeholders. I recall back then government officials said that we should follow established procedures. And it's easy for individual public officers or civil servants to get away, whereas it was easy for the government to pass the buck on to contractors as well as licensed plumbers. Of course, I think that the contractor should bear a greater degree of responsibility than licensed plumbers, because the system has been put in place for over 4 decades without amendment, and it's difficult to take them to task. And I understand that many licensed plumbers started as workers in the construction trade. If they are asked to undergo training and to employ workers, etc., they may find that there is just too many on their plate. Still, our society is improving. We should improve the pay and benefit for them. And also regarding the training regime, they should not be asked to have their income forgone because of training. And for contractors with workers having undergone training, they should be given a bonus, so to speak, so as to encourage workers to receive some basic hours of training. I think this is the crux of the problem, because we need to enhance the knowledge so that they would understand that their malpractice would cause great harm to the public. It should not be a matter of formality. We should enhance the quality of workers by enhancing training for them. As far as the law is concerned, I understand and I agree with the chair of the Bills Committee, Dr. Wai-kwok. He is the BPA's representative in this committee, and he mentioned in particular that we must consider the relevant stakeholders apart from the frontline licensed plumbers, because the consideration has been given to their situation. They have statutory defense available in the bill, and in fact in the construction industry there is a prevailing problem of lack of new blood joining the industry. So we should give them some leeway. Whereas for the contractor, we should step up the regulation. We need carrot and stick. So apart from giving them carrot, we should implement a penalty system. For example, some demerit points should be recorded, and then perhaps as they accumulate demerit points, they should be barred from bidding for contracts. And I also agree with other suggestions. For example, 6 months for prosecution. This is only being considerate for our licensed plumbers. Whereas for contractors and the relevant departments, I don't think they should be let off lightly. At that time, it was said that there were inadequacies in the procedure and that no one should be responsible. But which department first put this system in place? Which department should have been responsible for legislative amendments to keep ourselves up to date relating to the level of lead in drinking water, and yet no amendment has been made over the past 4 decades? We need to face the issue squarely. As society progresses, we have high expectations from the public. We should also consider social progress. And in fact, protection can't be offered by just one department, but across the departments. For example, which organ should oversee the water supply department for their failure to update the law? And what about the housing department? Whenever something major happens at the front line, such as the Lehman Brothers, ultimately the chief executive of Hong Kong MA, Joseph Yam, was held responsible. You should not just let the frontline people decide. This is what accountability means. In the medium term, I think this legislative amendment is nothing but one small step to allay the concerns of licensed plumbers and to improve our system as a whole. There is much more to do, not mentioned in the bill. I visited the housing estates that I am familiar with, like I said. After replacing filters or after replacing the water pipes gradually, these housing estates no longer require filters at the tap. For those not having the water pipes replaced, they need filters and they need the core filters replaced, or then there will be germs. What about children and expectant mothers? There are parents who have to quit their jobs to look after children suspected to have been affected by contaminated water. Shouldn't we look after these families as well? They are required to go through assessments and checkups to see if they need special education. In fact, this point has been argued in the Council for many times. What about compensation? Must we stay silent on the matter? Altogether, 11 housing estates were involved. After drinking water with excess lead, there might not be any harm on adults, but what about children? You should show some sincerity and set up a compensation mechanism. There is none at the moment. You said you would follow up on cases that involve children with a slower pace of development. Well, as I said, they dare not take the matter to court because it's already a great pain, a great pressure that these families are facing, and it may very easily take 6 to 10 years. But it doesn't mean that they have no right to seek compensation. This is how the government shows sincerity after something like this happened. After Lehman Brothers incident happened, in fact, the compensation from banks range from 60 to 100%. For aged investors, they were fully compensated. We have a change of administration, but you should not then play deaf. In the long term, I will continue to follow up on the matter. It's very difficult for us to prove the liability regarding children, and when it comes to criminal liability, the standard of proof is even higher. It's beyond reasonable doubt. Still, it doesn't mean that you can go scot-free and not compensate these families. They may not prove the causal link 100%, but we have something so serious happening with children suffering from intellectual impairment. So I think this administration should also own up to their words.
In terms of compensation and accountability, there must be something from your side. Would you study a compensation mechanism with other bureaus, including rental waivers, sanitary? You just took up the issue recently, but if you fulfill the promises made in the past, I'm sure everyone will thank you. All the affected estates would thank you, and that would be a bright spot on your resume. Ms. Alice Mack. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Madam Deputy, since the lead in water incidents were revealed, there has been heightened awareness on water safety. The Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017 has to do with the report of the Commission on the Inquiry. And it makes sure that the plumbing workers and their works are subject to more stringent requirements, which would ensure greater drinking water safety. As a member of the Bills Committee, one of the areas of discussion was safeguarding the rights of plumbing workers to work in sites, and plumbing workers who have the relevant knowledge in incidents such as lead in water. How can they provide a defense for themselves? The FTU, Construction Union, and Plumbing Union had meetings with the government multiple times, and the labor unions met the government again subsequently. We had detailed discussions on amendments to the bill. We talked about allowing plumbing workers to operate and safeguarding their rights in case of incidents, and they should be able to provide a defense for themselves. After multiple meetings with the government, they proposed certain amendments, and with the views of workers' unions and the workers, we welcome the government's move, and we hope that in the future, when the government serves to amend the WWO, they should again listen to frontline workers. Under the ordinance or under the bill, for workers of a specified trade divisions or those supervised or instructed by specified or authorized workers can carry out specified plumbing works, and this confirms the contribution of plumbing workers to the plumbing trade. If only LPs can carry out the plumbing works personally, we can imagine that there would be a lack of or shortage of manpower. So through this exercise, we have confirmed the or allowed the plumbing workers to operate. And under the WWO, we are yet to discuss the roles of professionals and contractors. And as such, plumbing workers might have to take up responsibilities for their employers or supervisors, and that is professionals and contractors. In case of contraventions, we talked about the liability of workers. The objective of the bill is to provide for defense for the workers. But we explained to the government why we feel this is not adequate. The proof or the burden of proof is originally on the workers. For plumbing workers in general, it's very hard to for them to provide defense for themselves, and that would lead to concerns for the workers. After discussions, the government would insert the clause that workers must be proved to knowingly commit an offense, or else the burden of proof would not be on them, and they would not have to provide a defense for themselves. At the committee stage, by the time we discuss the CSAs, I would further explain why we support the government's amendment. The bill also prescribes the time limit for prosecutions, and prosecutions was changed from the committal of an offense to discovery or coming to the notice of the Water Authority. We would explain later why we support such amendment, because in terms of the involvement of workers, their liability, the new arrangement would be much more proportionate. Overall speaking, even though the time required for scrutiny of the bill was longer than we expected, we saw that the government was willing to discuss with workers and workers' unions to refine the bill and provide confidence to workers. The amendments would safeguard the role of plumbing workers, and this would also facilitate the safety of drinking water. Some members asked or talked about training for plumbing workers, and the workers have a registration card, and they can choose to renew every 3 or 5 years. Under designated workers for designated skills, the trade division is specified on their registration card. So different workers should receive relevant training, and they should be educated on the safety of drinking water. The labor union supports more training opportunities for workers to facilitate their work. However, we hope that the government can offer more resources to these training bodies for workers. If you are to encourage a worker to attend a lesson, as you know, in the construction trade, workers have to work constantly to make money. So if they are not paid for these courses, how can we safeguard their interests, and how can we encourage them to attend classes? Right now, the classes are voluntary, but if you make it mandatory, you can consider paying these workers when they are in class. You can ask them to take up a course for 3 months, so long as they are paid. So in terms of training to workers, we hope the government would consider or review the allocation of resources. Apart from the plumbing trade, other trades in the construction industry also faces an aging workforce. The average age of the construction industry has exceeded 50, so you need to identify new blood. So that we can raise the status of construction workers, and we should facilitate their professional development, and through lessons they can refine their crafts. So we are certainly supportive. But as we said, it's all about resources. For if we make the courses mandatory, would they still be paid? If you ask them to take up a 3-month course, they would lose a lot of income. The bill does not touch upon contractors and professionals and the construction and design of the plumbing works. Their liability and participation or involvement has not been mentioned, so the government should review this as soon as possible and make relevant arrangements. We hope you would listen to the trade and workers so that these amendments would be well received. So I speak in support of the bill. Dr. N. Chang. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I speak in support of the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. As you know, the amendments to the bill are mainly to do with the lead and water incidents, and the government is reviewing the outdated Waterworks ordinance. Through this bill, I hope the government would ensure safe and clean drinking water for Hong Kong people, even though the bill did not mention the words water safety, and no standards are set on water quality. I hope that when the government puts up a Safe Drinking Water Act, they should look to improve the safety of drinking water. If we think about the lead in water incidents, one estate after another was found to have drinking water that contained excessive lead. So it was quite a scare for everyone. And I received calls for requests from residents at the time. And at that time, the DAB mobilized all district councillors and all our staff in different districts. We mobilized everyone in Hong Kong, and so long as requests were made from residents on drinking water, we try to help as much as possible. So we helped tested over 100,000 bottles of drinking water. As you know, water is essential for the human body, especially when the weather is dry. Subsequently, some samples were found to have excessive lead, which would lead to developmental issues for children. So we were indeed very concerned. In some cases, we might not be able to detect the lead or the problems immediately, but we will certainly follow up. Fortunately, the problem of excessive lead went away in some districts, and after subsequent examinations, the children were found to be sound again. So with this experience, we hope the administration would pay more attention to the quality of drinking water. When we look at the investigations subsequent to the lead and water incidents, one area of focus was inadequacies of our licensed plumbers.
In fact, in Hong Kong, back then we had only about 2,000 licensed plumbers, whereas our building activities were growing, and there was labor shortage in plumbing workers. So some licensed plumbers, LP, were just there to sign the necessary documentation. Could they have all the time to supervise the plumbing works? Well, ordinary workers or soldering workers be the actual workers to carry out the works. I'm sure we know full well that there was just not enough time for LPs to carry out the works themselves. So we ask how come the administration didn't take action to address the problem. Now, to receive a license, you must have a certificate issued by the VTC, and you have to have at least 4 years of relevant experience. So some masters in the trade have told us that to be a licensed plumbers, you have to go through so many tests. You have to take a written test on relevant waterworks knowledge, and you have to understand the whole process for applying a certificate from the water authority, and you have to draw building plans to show the plumbing design, and you have to know soldering, how to connect copper pipes and plastic pipes and so forth. I read a press interview recently. A female plumber, so soldering alone, her hands were scarred. So it was really a hard job. So it's so difficult to get a certificate to become an LP, and that explains the labor shortage in this trade. The bill seeks to amend the current ordinance. Will it be effective? Under the bill, if works are supervised by LPs in the future, then they can take place. However, the skilled workers need to apply for the necessary certificates. So, to a certain extent, this will help to alleviate the shortage problem. In the past, the actual plumbers might not even have taken any lesson and not without any training. They might just receive a short briefing and then they started to work on it. Now we have semi-qualified people who must go through some training at least before they can take on plumbing works. This is better than what was in the past, where we had the excess lead in water problem, and in old tenement buildings and in partitioning of subdivided units and addition of toilets, for instance, problems might be fewer as a result. For subdivided units, I've come across some cases. For instance, in Hong Kong at the waterfront, there are frequent complaints. They say that after heavy rain, the waterfront is very smelly. And after our follow-up action, we believe that could be caused by illegal alterations of subdivided units, and there is illegal connection of sewers to rainstorm sewers. And after investigation, the government told us that that was possible because they would use dye. They would add dye to sewage, and then soon they can see the color in discharge of rainwater sewers. So sewage is being passed into the sea untreated. So such unimaginable things are happening because unqualified or untrained people have been carrying out the works, leading to such mistakes. I believe the amendment bill will help to reduce the occurrence of such incidents. I hope the Secretary can respond to this point later. That is the LP responsible for supervision. Of course, he has to sign a certain document. The skilled or semi-skilled worker who actually carry out the works have to sign a document too, because we have seen incidents involving escalators or lifts. Because very often, two workers are deployed to carry out the relevant works, but the more senior or experienced technician might be away on a phone call or doing something else, and then the less experienced and less senior worker may carry out the works without any supervision, resulting in incidents. Now, putting back to the context of plumbing works, will only LPs be asked to sign the document? Will the skilled or semi-skilled worker stationed at the works area carrying out the works be required to sign a document as well? So that should there be an incident, not only the LP is held liable, even the workers working there will be held liable. I think that can be considered. Honestly speaking, an LP cannot supervise everything. In the long term, can we have a 3-tier system? Because we can be as big as a whole construction site involving a whole development or alteration of a single floor, so on and so forth. So for smaller projects, perhaps people with lower tier license can carry out the works, and there are developments with their plumbing systems replaced. What if there is a wrong connection? They have never really employed LP to carry out the works because it's too expensive. Ordinary decoration work at domestic premises will not hire a proper LP, so can more junior technicians or skilled workers be empowered to sign such documents? And for a whole block, middle-ranking skilled worker can do the job, and then for a whole development, perhaps an LP with the necessary experience. So please consider my suggestion. Since we have put on LPs a very onerous responsibility, they may be signing more and more documents in the future. An LP can employ many skilled workers to carry out the works for him so that he can oversee more construction sites. Once the hierarchy becomes big, risks will increase. So the next step for your review is not just to have one LP, rather under the LP, the skilled worker actually working at the site should also be required to sign the document. This will better safeguard the safety of our drinking water, and the skilled worker carrying out the works will also be held liable. Mr. Wilson Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. DAB supports the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. We hope the Secretary can once again hear the views we have collected from the community on the Waterworks Ordinance. Madam Chair, you may recall that starting from July 2015, many residential developments, public or private alike, or even educational institutions had problems with excess lead found in drinking water. People panicked, and the government was criticized for being rather disorganized and unable to cope. The whole water supply system, the materials to be used, the control and supervision, and the technical standards, and so on and so forth, were found to have a lot of loopholes. Fortunately, after that miserable experience, the government has finally waken up to the problem. The former CE, Wai Leung, in his last policy address promised to follow up on the various recommendations given by the Commission of Inquiry and to formulate a comprehensive plan to safeguard water safety. And he has introduced a number of suggestions and measures to review our Waterworks ordinance. The design, the roles and responsibilities of all persons involved in our water supply system will be reviewed. And I understand that for the supervision of materials used in our plumbing system, I understand that the administration has taken references from overseas standards to come up with a water safety plan. The government has also delineated the roles, responsibility of persons responsible for carrying out the construction and the standard of materials used in plumbing systems, and also the regulatory system, and also the responsibilities and involvements of various persons involved. And the bill is part of the outcome of his work. As a member of this council representing the community, I'm pleased to see that we'll finally have a system to delineate the roles and responsibility involvements of persons responsible for carrying out plumbing works. We support the amendments because this will better reflect the policy intent and will also better reflect the industry practice. For those who are involved in works, you understand that it's not easy to employ an LP. If the soldering works can only be carried out by an LP, there will be a great demand for LPs in the market. As a result, demand will outstrip supply, and the cost of plumbing works will escalate if only LPs can be employed to carry out the works. In the long term, these regulations will ensure that we have extra labor force without affecting the overall cost of works. And there are amendments on related offences and also defences. And the Waterworks Authority can enter premises with or without a warrant to ensure that the works are being carried out by persons designated for carrying out the plumbing works. This is a very desirable amendment, and the time limit for prosecution will also be amended.
So that we can make use of this opportunity to eradicate any gray area in the law. And I agree. In the course of scrutinizing the bill, I understand that many members have raised various concerns on behalf of, say, the public and the industry. And I'm happy to see that the government has responded to these concerns so that a balance is struck between protecting the public and facilitating the industry, to allow the practitioners in the plumbing trade to understand the law better, so as to avoid being inadvertently caught by the law. I propose that relevant guidelines be drawn up with specific details. I don't know whether there are already guidelines at the moment, but there should be guidelines as well as enhanced publicity, as I always remind the Secretary, because sometimes the government may be acting out of goodwill, and yet without clear explanation to the public, there could be misunderstanding. So, Secretary, I urge you once again to step up publicity and public education. Madam Deputy, apart from the bill, I'm also concerned about the safety of drinking water in Hong Kong. The bill, after being passed, can implement certain recommendations to improve the safety of drinking water in Hong Kong. But on the whole, we need more effort from the government. Well, after the excess lead in drinking water incident happened in 2015, government departments have actively been following up on the matter. At the district level, I can see that they have better delineation of work and some improvement measures. apart from amending the Waterworks ordinance, I understand there are other recommendations. On the 21st of September last year, the government also published an action plan on enhancing the safety of drinking water in Hong Kong, including a regular surveillance program which is done on an annual basis. Water samples will be taken from the taps of households to step up monitoring of the water quality, and there will also be step-up supervision on the standards of materials for water pipes. As for owners and property management companies, there will also be plans to ensure building safety, and by way of assessment, water supply in buildings will also be monitored. Well, I'd like to express this on behalf of the Public Secretary. While having done all this work, please remember to step up publicity and public education because it is very important. Madam Deputy, the government has made a lot of effort, but I think that recently there is another scandal boiling in housing estates because, according to a recent survey, there seems to be something wrong with the drinking water. When I visit my constituency, I would go to the public housing estates and ask the tenants there whether there is anything wrong with drinking water there. It could happen. You may recall in November last year in Kwai Ching, Chun Wan, Sha Tin, somehow public housing estates also found the water being contaminated, leading to stomachache for some tenants after drinking the water. So all these incidents show that safe drinking water is really an issue close to the heart of the public. The government should stay vigilant. Earlier, I submitted a written question. I received a response from the government. Although it is said that at the moment our regulatory regime is sound and we have a very stringent effort, but I think more importantly we should do more to ensure the safety of drinking water because it is a necessity for everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the government the following. For the enhanced water quality surveillance program, it is done by way of sampling from the household's water taps for tests every year. And then for the local monitoring data, it will be included in the database to decide whether to adopt a standard that exceeds the WHO standard. However, there is no monitoring of the water quality apart from the water tap outlet. Sometimes when I am acting in the capacity of a district councillor, I would be asked by residents whether the government is doing that is to monitor the quality of water from the point of supply. And I have this advice. We need comprehensive testing all the way along the water supply chain. Because sometimes we may not be able to meet the standard. So, Secretary, through this legislative amendment exercise, you should do a gatekeeping job and do more for the public. Please go back and think about it because this is what the public wants. I have another suggestion for the government, Madam Deputy. I hope they can give it a thought. After passing the bill, I think that the government should step up regulation on personnel responsible for installing the inside service. Because according to the trade, it is a prevalent practice for the personnel to just put down a signature. And I think this does not suffice. The government should work on all fronts, from the source of water to the technology to the water pipe network. all the way to the inside service, to water coming out from the tap of households ready for drinking. I think that the Development Bureau should learn a lesson and improve in future. I hope that you can be more committed. I'm not saying that you lacked commitment before, but there is always room for improvement. Finally, Madam Deputy, I'd like to refer to another point, that is water coming out from the tap. I think there should be water quality monitoring points so that we build a proper network, monitoring network, to make sure that the quality of water is monitored throughout the whole supply network, so that we can monitor the quality both upstream and downstream. And we can also draw on the reference of other countries such as US, UK, Singapore, and even the mainland, which are pretty advanced in terms of their water laws. There should be a proper set of laws. There should also be an independent authority responsible for monitoring the quality of water. As I always say, drinking water is an issue close to the heart of everyone. After the bill has been passed, I hope that the Secretary can work with your team and tell us in the short term your proposed solutions. Before I conclude my speech, Madam Deputy, I'd like to say this to the government. This is what I always say to various government departments as I have meetings with them. I hope that you can hold more meetings to avoid misunderstanding, because more communications would lead to a success. At various districts, when I talk to different civil servants from different government departments, I always cite this motto. I really hope, Secretary, you would remember what I say, so that you can understand better how the public really feels about the safety of drinking water and their concerns, so that the government can improve its whole monitoring system. Madam Deputy, I support this amendment bill and I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Ho Kai-ming. Thank you, Madam Deputy. On behalf of the FTU, I give my support to the government's amendment bill. The plumbing trade, or the plumbers, is really a very popular occupation. A licensed plumber may earn $38,000 a month, well, somewhat similar to the pay for a district councillor. So why is it that we do not have enough licensed plumbers in Hong Kong? Why can't we attract new blood? At the moment, we only have 3,000 LPs in Hong Kong. Is it sufficient? We have a 7 million population here, and every household unit requires water supply, which means that plumbing workers will be involved in the construction, maintenance, alteration, and repair of the inside service. We rely on the effort of plumbing workers. But since the lead in water incident happened, licensed plumbers have been bearing the blunt. With only a size of 3,000, they rely on plumbing workers to help their work. And because of inadequate supervision from the government, lead is found in excess in the drinking water of over 10 public housing estates. It is only reasonable that the government steps up its supervision, so we support this bill. The bill provides that plumbing works can be carried out under the supervision of a licensed plumber or specified person specified by the Water Authority. And this would allow registered skilled worker or registered licensed plumber to supervise the works. Over the past decades, the number of LPs has been far from sufficient. even the WSD has a manpower shortage. So regarding the government's amendment bill, this will help boost the labor force in the trade, and with more effective supervision, the safety of drinking water can also be ensured. However, at the same time, the government should also consider increasing manpower for the WSD. The WSD is an excellent department. Over the past decades, despite the growth in Hong Kong's population, the manpower in the WSD has dropped from 6,000 during the SARS era to just some 4,000. That means one staff member of WSD will have to undertake more and more water meters. As we understand, recently there is a succession gap in the department and also manpower shortage. There might be staff members who are really experienced at the district level, responsible for Waterworks, and they are retiring. Not to mention at the regional level, because for Waterworks, one characteristic is that a decision cannot be made there and then on site. One may not even understand the actual situation just by looking at the plans. A decade ago in Sha Tin, as I heard, there was an incident involving the replacement of flushing water with fresh water. And in fact, is it the other way around, Director? And in fact, the matter was wrong, and with the help of really experienced staff members who provided on-site supervision, the matter was then resolved. However, if we do not have such experienced staff in the department, it is impossible to monitor the work of the private sector. So the director or secretary, you should go back and gauge the manpower of the department and see if you can cope with the workload. We have the new initiative, and I don't know whether it is because the water supply has been so stable. Anyway, go back and think about this. It is true that there is a shortage of manpower even in the private sector. In the private sector, we have been liaising with the plumbing associations and the trade unions. In terms of the offence provisions, they've shown grave concerns, because for the materials to be used in the line of work, very often these are specified by the developers or the contractors, and they have no idea whether they are up to standard. They just do the bidding of their bosses. So it would be very wrong to hold the workers liable. Although there is a defense provision, many of the workers are grassroots, blue-collar class. They may not know how to defend themselves.
At the Bills Committee, Alice Mack of FTU expressed the views of our workers' unions, and after lengthy discussions, the government introduced an amendment that unless a worker knowingly commits an offense, he or she would not be held liable. So at the end, the burden of proof is on the administration, and the workers do not have to provide for defense for themselves. So we would support the amendments. The amendments serve to legalize or regularize the existing arrangements so that the work of the plumbing workers would be legitimate. And there are issues with succession at the trade. The WSD has to outsource certain works to other companies. So the government and the private market are both fighting for the same pool of talents. So do we have enough workers to deal with these works? Very often, a lot of outsourced projects are taken up by former or retired WSD staff So perhaps we have enough people in the next 5 or 7 years, but by the time these retired staff reach about 70, where do we find the manpower? We used to have an apprenticeship program to provide training because the plumbing trade is a very small trade, and we used to have an apprenticeship program to provide a career ladder for the workers. And that way people were willing to join the trade, but the scheme is no longer in place. For the chairman of our union, he used to be a worker, and now he's a senior technical worker. So how can we provide a career ladder for our young people so that they can see bright prospects as a licensed plumber? Right now, we are not sending a clear signal for our young people, and they do not see prospects. So the WSD has not done a good job in promoting the trade. The WSD might have to step up its education efforts, and they must tell the public that there are prospects to the trade. That way, more people will join the trade. And some people might choose to become a licensed plumber since they can earn $38,000. That would be an alternative to running for district councils. So if we provide a career path for young people, the government, the government must step up its publicity to encourage more people to join the trade. Plumbing works are very complicated, and after taking 3-month courses at the construction industry, courses, written and oral exams must be passed before you can become a licensed plumber. And you must practice for a year before you can become an intermediate worker. And the pass rate is 70%. And for advanced workers, the pass rate is only 36%. So it's certainly very difficult. We need to identify new blood, and we need to rely on experienced plumbing workers to teach the younger generation how they can deal with common issues. This is something the government should consider. How can we pass on knowledge on plumbing to the next generation? This is something the government should think about. When we discuss this with the workers' union, we have approached very experienced plumbing workers and see if they can pass on the knowledge to younger workers. This is certainly a very good idea. And I understand the government is conducting such work. So hopefully the government can help the WSD conduct such work to develop plumbing works in Hong Kong. If we can only allocate extra manpower resources to the WSD for new projects, it will be unfair. Of course, for power companies, the reliability rate is already 99.9%, but the public has certain expectations. So how can we strike a balance between the use of public resources and the completion of the plumbing works? This is something the government must consider. As for the LP license, is even harder to secure. You need to receive the craft certificate in plumbing and pipe fitting from the VTC, and you need 4 years of work experience before you can receive an LP license. So it's hard to ask those 3,000 plumbers to personally carry out the works. But with such credentials, they can become licensed plumbers. So the LPs deserve a higher salary, and that way more people will enter the trade. We understand that the high requirements for certificates or exams serve to ensure the quality of the work. So the government must step up publicity and appeal to more capable young people to join the trade. So they can be versatile. Not all young people might prefer to study. They can take up work in different trades. So in terms of training, the development should work with the Education Bureau, and relevant credentials or qualifications might be granted under the qualifications framework. For example, for plumbing workers, would a certain skill or credential level correspond to a bachelor's degree? So we need to tell our young people that by becoming an LP, they would be seen equivalent to a university graduate. That way we will have more blue-collar workers to serve Hong Kong people. That way we can tackle the manpower shortage and enhance the quality of drinking water. So again, I support the bill. Mr. Xu Ka-chun. Madam Deputy, there were reports that the Progressive Action Camp is filibustering so that the motion to summon Ms. Teresa Chang would be delayed. I want to speak for a child called Wang Chun Kit. I have reflected my views to the Social Welfare Department, but I'd like to share the story of Wang Chun Kit today. Wang Chun Kit is a 7-year-old kid. In April 2015, his family moved into Wing Chun Estate. So in 3 months, they found that the water in Yun Chang Estate was found to contain excessive lead, and Chun Kit's family received blood tests arranged by the government. According to the report, the level of lead in Kit's blood was 5.92 milligrams, and he was diagnosed with with attention disorder and intellectual impairment. You might say that there are many reasons to these conditions, but we can see that according to the report of the Commission of Inquiry into Excess Lead, for every 100 mils of water, if the level of lead is 5 to 10 milligrams, the likelihood is of intellectual impairment among the children is 5.2 times compared with ordinary children. And of 126 children, 9 children were found to have intellectual impairment, and Wang Chun Kit was among those 9. Before they moved in Yun Chang Estate, Kit's mother said he had good temper, but after moving into the estate, he became more and more agitated, and the symptoms were more and more obvious, and he would throw a tantrum often. So he became very volatile, and he could not focus on his homework. He could only complete his homework accompanied by someone else, or else he would be he could not write 2 words in 20 minutes. When he heard sounds of wind, etc., he could not concentrate. And come mealtime, he was also very slow. He spent 4 hours to finish a bowl of rice, and by the time his family went to bed, he had not finished his meal. So even without the TV switch on, he would appear restless, even though the government said lead in water had no direct relation with development issues. But in the eyes of his mother, she realized that all the changes or effects were due to lead in water. Madam Deputy, after diagnosis, Chun Kit was arranged speech therapy, and he became much more logical, and the symptoms eased. And the government said that the subsidies for children under 6 with development issues were geared towards welfare bodies. So the subsidy could no longer be granted to Wang Chun Kit. In August 2017, Wang Chun Kit turned 8 and he could not receive the services anymore. So what about the private services? They were very expensive. They range from $700 to $1,500 per hour. And as for public services, they have to wait till March 2019 to receive speech therapy. And in the meantime, there is no support at all. Madam Deputy, I wrote to the SWD on this case requesting follow-up. I found that social workers had a role to play in the lead in water incidents. The Water Supplies Department actually has a social workers team, and it's already in operation. And the service is outsourced to different bodies, and the social workers would be responsible for following up the lead in water incidents. Follow-up is a nice way to put it, but in reality, they are just punching bags for people to vent their frustrations. We are dealing with this bill. Other members talked about the source of water or plumbing workers, but these amendments are not the end of the story.
Much has to be followed up. For example, the case of Chun Kit, and also the issue of responsibility, which cannot be delegated to the team of social workers. Wang Chun Kit, a kid of 7, his mother had high hopes for him. He wanted Chun Kit to be a Chun Kit or a hero or a smart person. I hope all people who talk about lead in water would be also smart. Dr. Kwok, I rise to speak in support of the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. Why do we have this bill here? We all remember a few years ago there was the lead in water incident. Some 40 places were affected where water was found in where lead was found in water. Mostly housing authorities, PRH. We remember Kwai Ching Estate, Kwai Lun Estate, Sui Chino Estate, especially in Kai Ching Estate, where the use of prefabricated construction material was used, including the kitchen and the water pipes. It was found that there was excessive lead in water. The government failed to respond in an appropriate manner. It was panicky. And the residents was outraged, and the officials were given a glass of tap water to drink. And this then Chief Secretary for Administration, instead of offering an apology, criticized those residents for asking the officials to drink the water. This is most regrettable. And then the government wanted to find a quick solution for this incident. And that's why the Waterworks Amendment Bill was tabled. According to Cap 102, Waterworks Ordinance, and also to the relevant construction worker registration ordinance, there will be amendments incorporated into the ordinances to specify certain works and also to prosecute people carrying out plumbing works. Where we were talking about plumbing workers, contractors, licensed plumbers, and so on. I don't want to be involved in the nitty-gritty of the bill. I have no strong views about the provisions and the details. And now the government would target the plumbing workers and the licensed plumbers. You can't say that it's not right. Remember Mr. Lam Tak Sam, a licensed plumber who was responsible for plumbing works. Of course, it was not up to Mr. Lam to decide the material and the pipes and the soldering material to be used. The decision was made by the principal contractor and the subcontractors, and they try to cut corners and save on material and cut costs. Well, we remember the construction contractors, China Construction, and some local construction companies as well. We have no idea what China Construction did and where and how, on how many occasions where we had excessive lead in water. And the government tried to play down the incident, and to do this, they introduced this bill. Will this bill ensure that there will be no further incident of lead in water? Of course, I don't have the confidence. You are just targeting the lowest rank of the structure, and that is the plumbing workers and the licensed plumbers. The principal contractors decides what material or what soldering material should be used. And you can say that the workers and the plumbers can refuse to work. But we know that there are members here representing the employees, and they would know that these workers have no say, and you should point it out in your speeches. These plumbing workers are just make scapegoats, because we know who make the profit out of the plumbing works. It's the contractors, China Construction, etc., and not the plumbing workers or the licensed plumbers. But that doesn't mean that we would oppose to this bill. The Development Bureau responded to us that this would just be the first step. Next, we are going to target the large-scale construction and companies and contractors, and also people who can make decisions, like the architect, to show that their responsibility. Well, I would say I take note of that, they repeatedly said during the Bills Committee's deliberation that they would do this. So I would wait and see when those are the bills, when those other bills will be presented. Under Cap 102, the Waterworks Ordinance, we only focus on the primary levels of the works, because it only prescribes the way waterworks are to be carried out, the material to be used, and also the supervisors, the licensed plumbers, and the plumbing workers should do some, should carry out their work according to some requirements. If we make reference to other countries, do they rely on such an ordinance like the WWO to regulate water safety? Of course not. A few years ago, a motion was moved on water quality in this council. And when we refer to more advanced countries and how they set their safety standards for water quality, we will find laws regulating quality of drinking water, such as the EU's Drinking Water Quality Directive in 1998, and 2011, the updated UK Waterworks Act. And in 2014, that was another EU directive on water quality. In 2011, Australia enacted a statutory set of standards for drinking water quality. So other countries will not rely on a narrowly based waterworks ordinance to regulate water quality, because there are many factors involved. We have to look at the source of water, this water supply system, and the construction and connection of new pipes, the use, the type of soldering material to be used, and the supply to different homes and estates. Since we don't have a law on water quality and safety, or the regulation of any personnel above the level of plumbing workers, the government says that we have the water supplies department. Will the department be sufficient to solve all the problems? Although this is a government department, we cannot be confident that everything will be okay, even though there is some public-private initiative. We wouldn't say that since we have the police force, we don't need laws to protect our people, or that we have this custom and excise department. The C&E department will enforce their laws, and we don't need anything else. We need the laws constantly updated to afford us the protection we need. After the outbreak of the lead in water incidents, people in Hong Kong came to the realization that so in the past we did not test for lead in water. It was the test was about the pH value, whether and the turbidity, and so on. Apart from heavy metals, and we are not just talking about lead, what about the chromium and other heavy metals, and other carcinogens, organic matters, for which we need to set standards. And most of our water supply comes from Dongjiang. Some members said when they visited the Dongjiang location, it was okay there. But there's more than one source. With an electrical delegation there, of course, they would make sure that everything is all right. More importantly, I think we should rely on laws which are proportionate to our needs. And the government has never promised to enact a piece of legislation on water quality and safety. We are asked to find our way forward under CAP 102. But in CAP 102, we are talking about downstream matters, piping materials and soldering material, which is at the very low end of the whole chain. If we are talking about anything above the soldering material and the pipes, for example, the quality of water supplied in the system, the gathering grounds and catchment area of our reservoirs are protected, of course, but it's just a small part of the total supply. Most of the water is from the mainland, from Dongjiang. And the water has to be channeled to Hong Kong through their pipes and their systems. How can we regulate their operations? CAP 102 is only applicable to Hong Kong. The enactment of a piece of legislation on water safety and quality would not harm the prospect of ensuring water quality for Hong Kong people. And the government is narrow-minded. It just wants to scrape through the current difficulties. I think the government is smart. What they are doing is about buying time and make do while they can. Next time when we have a problem, the officials, including the director and the secretary, would have already been posted out or retired. The government keeps saying that you want to rule according to the law. The rule of law is important. You don't have a comprehensive piece of legislation on water quality and safety, and you just cling on to the Waterworks ordinance. I don't think we are able to deliver. President, there should be an independent authority authorized to carry out the tests and to set water safety, and then the water supply system of the WSD should comply with the required standards. That will be the ultimate guarantee for water quality and safety. Instead of such a patchwork solution, we should get that.
Mr. Leung Chi-Chang, whether it's a band-aid approach, we'll know in our debate during the committee stage. Now, this is a piece of legislation that's been around for more than 4 decades, so it's right that it's reviewed now. Now, it's because of the lead in water incident that's sparked too much public concern. And then we found out in the process that the law is outdated. It's not easy to prosecute people because it's hard to find out who's actually responsible. So the Lamtek Sam case is an obvious example. This Waterworks Amendment Bill tries to amend certain ambiguities in the bill to clarify responsibilities. Now, it's to require that licensed plumbers must first seek permission from the water authority before carrying out specified plumbing works. And by the time the pumping works are completed, the licensed plumber must make sure that the works are in compliance with the requirements of the Waterworks ordinance. And these requirements include are meant to spell out specifically the roles and responsibilities of licensed plumbers and others involved, and I'm all in support of these amendments. This bill covers quite a number of issues in the review. Now, how do we carry out plumbing installations, including inside service and fire services? Because in the old or the current legislation, fire service is covered. And so there's no distinction between water supply for fire service and inside service. And then it's more than just about water safety. It's also about fire safety. That's why the amendments in this bill are important. I'll come to drinking water safety later. Right now, there is a process to follow. A licensed plumber has to apply to carry out plumbing installation or make alterations, and before doing so, they must seek permission from the water authority. Now, after the permission is given, is it the case that the licensed plumber will himself carry out the works? Of course not. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been the Lam Taxam case. So after the permission is given, the licensed plumber may entrust someone to do the work. And these people may not have the same knowledge as that of the licensed plumber. We've learned some of them may have taken up a course for a few years at the a vocational training institute, or there are others who joined the trade in the 1980s or whatever. But anyway, we're talking about works that cannot be carried out just by any workers. Those carry out the works must be familiar with the process. Very often when the plumbing works are entrusted to someone else, these people may make mistakes, and that may result in a breach of the law, and these people may not even know they have committed an offense. So that's why it's now stated clearly in the bill for the plumbers or the skilled workers, they will be given clear guidelines to follow. So in future, if they make a mistake, then if these people are to be prosecuted, that means the water authority must trace the process in carrying out plumbing installations to see whether there's any breach of the Waterworks ordinance. Now for Section 14.3 of the Waterworks ordinance, how do we ascertain whether the works have not violated this particular section and so on? Well, the burden of proof actually lies with the water authority on whether there is a breach of Section 14. So with this bill, it's possible to supervise the whole process, and then for skilled workers, they would not be held liable for any breach of the law unknowingly. Now, I'm a member of the Bills Committee, and I think the arrangement proposed in the bill will offer suitable protection and defense to all parties involved in the works, so it's reasonable. The bill also proposes to revise the time limit for prosecution. It's to be changed from within 6 months from the date of commission to within 6 months from the discovery of or coming to the notice of the WA. Now, if someone has committed an offense, it's stated that the no prosecution will be taken out after 6 years. So these are the amendments in the bill, and we find them acceptable. But what do workers think about these amendments? What about the skilled workers? What do they think of the bill? Now, after the bill is passed into law, there must be adequate publicity and education. So licensed plumbers and the skilled workers will know what their roles are, especially where changes are involved. They must be fully briefed. Now, on inspection of works to ascertain whether works have been carried out by the specified persons, I think the amendments in the bill are reasonable, so I'll support them. But before the authority exercises his power, there must be wide publicity to prevent undue resistance. So that's my view. Those are my views on the bill. So I submit. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Horace Cheung. President, on the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017, under consideration, I support it. I don't think anyone will question the importance of water quality. Before the lead in water incident, we all took water safety as for granted. We never thought what we needed to do to ensure there's no problem with water quality. So what was the scenario before the lead in water incident? I understand that Water Supplies Services Department did not actually set any standards on water quality. And these criteria, they actually criteria of the WHO or Hong Kong, we were not sure. Now, for public rental housing or public housing or private housing developers, of course, all contractors knew it's not appropriate to use lead in the soldering materials. So it's stated in the contract of the housing department that contractors must not use soldering materials with lead. But now, after the lead in water incident, no one could trace when leaded soldering materials were used and at which point. Now, the bill as the Secretary, I support your amendments. While Dr. Kwok Kaki said he would support the bill too, although you would never expect to hear any compliments from him to say that you're doing a good job, so don't worry. Now, but instead he criticized you for he criticized that you have this bill because you want to make workers you want to put the blame on workers, but at the end he said he supported the bill, so that means he endorsed your work. So it doesn't matter if he doesn't give you any compliments. Now, anyway, I certainly do not agree that the purpose of this bill is to find scapegoats. Why, as I said, for the lead in water incident, or before that rather, we had a blind spot on lead. Now, for the water service department, the contractors, and even workers, my understanding is that before the incident, it's not the case that they deliberately chose materials containing lead to pose public hazards. Some workers, solderers, told me, you know, I do soldering for water pipes, especially for public housing projects. But Mr. Cheung, you know, I live in public housing estate. My whole family lives in public housing estate. My friends live in public housing estate. So would I do something like this? That I would purposely look for materials with lead for soldering to pose hazards, health hazards to my family members and my friends. So it is more like a systemic error, because it's a blind spot for all of us. And so lead was found in soldering materials. Now, it's not something we had wanted to see, and certainly we don't want to see it happening again. But really, for all stakeholders in the community, we would all like to learn from this blind spot. So this amendment bill is exactly about delineating responsibilities so that as to avoid another systemic error. So I do not agree with Dr. K.K. Kwok that this is a case about finding scapegoats. Under the existing legislation, as mentioned in the Bills Committee report, licensed plumbers or public officers authorized by the Water Authority may carry out works. And then in 2017, the November Bureau submitted a legal brief to us. It said that that's the intention of the bill. Still, nonetheless, licensed plumbers may be assisted by workers to carry out plumbing installations. Has always been the legislative intent of the bill, and that's been the mode of operation in the trade for decades.
The bill first stipulates that only licensed plumber or other authorized public officers can do it. However, the wording of the bill represents certain departure from the practice in the trade. This time around, we are bringing in amendments to the bill to delineate who are the persons who can undertake the plumbing works. I believe this is pragmatic. Certainly, President, in this bill, we now delineate who are the people who can undertake what kind of works. And of course, if the people who are not the designated people, they may break the law. And that is why we should talk about the defense provision in the bill, which was controversial. As stated in the Bills Committee report, the Bureau said that if a worker who finds a problem, then he can invoke a defense, and that is if the worker will prove that he believes that carrying out the works would not contravene the law, then that is a defense. Many members in the Bills Committee felt that that was not good enough, that the defense provision was problematic. If the project itself is problematic and you now prosecute the worker, but you ask the worker to prove that he believed that carrying out the plumbing works would not contravene the law and it was reasonable for him or her to so believe. Now, if the project is already problematic, but then you are asking a person to prove that any reasonable man will find that not to be a problem. Now, I don't think that is a reasonable standard. And that is why members asked whether a more suitable standard can be included so that if a situation should arise and if the worker wants to invoke the defense provision, there would be a better standard for him to use to invoke that defense. I like to compliment the Bureau in this regard because after knowing members' views, the Bureau has proposed a CSA to stipulate that plumbing workers are liable only if they know, meaning that they have to know, they have to have the knowledge that carrying out the works will contravene the law, and only then will the worker be liable. Now, I believe this kind of defense is comparatively better than the original one proposed by the Bureau. And workers will have more assurance when they go about their work. I like to compliment the Bureau for doing this. Also, in the bill, and we have come across another point which proved to be a controversy in the Bills Committee, and that is the time limit for prosecutions according to the WWO and the Magistrates' Ordinance or the WW regulations. If prosecution has to be brought, it has to be made within a period of 6 months from the date on which the offense is discovered by or comes to the notice of the WA. Now, that is a common restriction in the law. And it is said that if it is counted from the date on which the offense is committed, so from the day on which the offense is committed, now it is changed to from the date on which the offense is discovered by or comes to the notice of the WA. So there will be a longer time limit for prosecution, and I can understand why that is the case, because after the works are completed, you may not discover the irregularity. That is why there is this proposal. But workers question this. They may say, today I work on this project and tomorrow I work on another project, and then 3, 5, 7 years down the road, suddenly you come to tell me that 3, 5, 7 years ago you worked on a project that was problematic and now you are prosecuted. And the workers will say they have forgotten where they worked so many years ago. They are just a welding worker and they might not enter into a diary what they do every day. And in order to invoke a reasonable defense, this will be a very difficult situation for workers. Therefore, members have said that can we extend the time limit to 6 years so that everybody will know where the line is drawn? Again, I think the Bureau has done a good job. When members raised this proposal, the administration said that after considering how much time will be needed in order to gather evidence for prosecution, and also after looking into the relevant provisions in similar laws and similar situations, the administration is of the view that since in recent years they have stepped up the checking of completed plumbing works, the WA should be able to come to a view as to whether any works projects is problematic within a period of 6 years. Since the administration has indeed looked into the actual situation of plumbing works in Hong Kong, and the administration has also stepped up its inspection. In other words, whenever a project is completed, it will immediately conduct inspection to see whether there is any irregularity or whether there is any lead present in the water. And that can take care of the original worry that the problem may be discovered only 8-10 years down the road. Therefore, under the
major premise of public interest, I think the Bureau has done very good considerations, and it is now very responsive in proposing a CSA. I think that is an appropriate consideration and decision. I'd like to tell the Bureau Secretary that indeed he made a very wise decision. And I hope that later on, when there are similar policies, when we study other bills, I hope the administration will do what it is doing this time, and that is to listen to members' views and go back and consider our views seriously, instead of mechanically refusing to listen and coming up with dozens of reasons to say why they cannot listen to us. And as you heard this morning, some members asked for CSAs to be done. The administration indeed proposed CSAs, but they were a distance away from what members wanted, and in the end members could not support the proposal, as what happened this morning with the Dutiable Commodities Amendment Bill 2017. I hope the scrutiny of this bill will be of demonstrative effect, even if there is a division of work amongst the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. Still, we can work together to act as gatekeepers in order to bring a good bill for the benefit of the public. I think this is a good example. So I speak. Mr. Michael Luke. Thank you, President. Ms. Alice Mack and Mr. Jonathan Ho of the FTU should speak on the bill, and I did not intend to speak. But then I heard some criticism from some members, and I must speak up. You would be quite deterred if you don't know what is happening, but if you are in the know, you would find that a joke. Dr. K.K. Kwok of the Civic Party might not have read the bill, in my view. He emphasized that the bill might bear pressure to be borne by workers, and he was trying to scaremonger them. And he asked whether members who should be here to defend workers' rights are not speaking up. Well, I will not consider myself one of those criticized. At a very early stage, I already set up an appointment with the Development Bureau, both in the last term and this term. Under the FTU, the Water Pipe Workers General Union has met the administration, which has adopted our views. Just now, a member mentioned members here who should defend workers' rights. I don't think he was speaking about us. Maybe he was speaking about those who he knew well, say those from the Labour Party. But as a member here, you should really look closely what the bill is about and also listen to other members. Just now, Ms. Alice Mack and Mr. Jonathan Ho had already spoken, and Dr. K.K. Kwok should not speak too lightly without getting to know the details. I must reprimand that. As I said, the administration has taken on board our views, and now the worker must know that they are breaking the law when they use problematic materials. From the angle of protecting public safety, we must regulate that. They would be the black sheep, and they must be taken to task. But I believe there are not such workers in the trade. There are absolutely no such workers. They all want to protect public health. They are professional, and they will not do it knowingly and use irregular soldering materials to connect water pipes. But it's all right for this to be in the bill, because after all, we are talking about the law. Also, the bill makes an amendment, because originally only a licensed plumber or a public officer authorized by the Water Authority can undertake water piping work. And at present, workers may be temporary workers and who have just received short periods of training. And they may not achieve the standard of a licensed plumber. But now there are amendments, and under their supervision, the registered plumbing worker or registered plumbing worker provisional can also undertake the work in order to serve the public better, because that is the reality. So we support the bill, but I again hope that members, before they speak, should really read the content of the bill and listen to other members, and not habitually scold other members. I remember what the president said, and that was a famous quote. He said that members did not have to refer to facts when they speak here. But anyway, if a member doesn't talk about facts, we have the responsibility to correct that. Many people in the labor sector and FTU members here must clarify and set the record straight. Thank you. President, I support the bill. I'd like to ask the Secretary for Development to speak, and after that the debate will come to an end.
On behalf of the government, I would like to thank the Bills Committee, the Chairman of the Bills Committee, Dr. Wai-kwok, and the members and the Secretariat staff for their hard work and efforts. And I would like to thank all members who have provided views and suggestions, and other people who have done the same. Collectively, they have made sure that this bill can be enacted smoothly. As we set out when we presented the bill to this council, we hope through this bill we can accord priorities to the relevant proposals concerning the plumbing workers and licensed plumbers, and in the process of carrying out waterworks.
This will better reflect the policy intention and also the mode of operation of the trade. Now, there are 4 aspects to the bill. First of all, apart from registered licensed plumbers or persons authorized, public officers authorized by the Water Authority, the bill proposes to allow registered workers and some registered semi-skilled workers registered under the Construction Workers Registration Ordinance for the specified trade division to carry out plumbing installations, plumbing works. I will also speak on the amendments on the duties of the workers later during the committee stage. And also, secondly, for the duties of the licensed plumbers in relation to the need to seek permission from the Water Authority to carry out works, the administrative requirements are proposed to be upgraded to statutory requirements. And then, thirdly, to ensure the effectiveness of the regulation regime, it is proposed that the time limit for prosecution will be 6 months from the date on which the offence is discovered by or comes to the notice of the Water Authority. In response to members' views, I will be moving committee stage amendment later. Finally, to ensure that works are carried out by the authorized personnel, apart from premises or part of premises that is used for habitation, the WA is empowered to enter into any premises without consent and warrant to ascertain whether the works are being carried out by persons designated for carrying out the plumbing works. So the Bills Committee held 6 meetings between May last year and June this year. The Bills Committee has also conducted clause-by-clause scrutiny of all the bill. It's also proposed various views on the content of the bill. I'm glad that the bill in general has this endorsement of the Bills Committee. And also having heard members' views, we will be moving some amendments later on. I will explain them during the committee stage. I understand that during the course of scrutiny by the Bills Committee, some members have expressed views outside the scope of the bill. We fully appreciate members' concern about water safety. So as usual, we will continue to listen to views from all parties. And we have also started a comprehensive review of the Waterworks Ordinance. At the moment, we've also put in place a plumbing materials surveillance program so that we will do random sampling as necessary. At the same time, as I said, we plan to start comprehensive review of the Waterworks Ordinance. We will review the duties and responsibilities of all involved in plumbing installations. We will also review and streamline the vetting procedures and review the regulation of plumbing materials and maintenance of plumbing systems. We have set up a working group on the comprehensive review. We have invited views from the sector, professional bodies, and relevant departments. We hope that by the end of this year, we could start initial public consultation on the way forward. And I hope members will support the bill. Thank you.
I now put the question to you that the Waterworks Amendment Bill 2070 be read the second time. With those in favour, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Waterworks Amendment Bill 2017. Council now becomes committee of the whole Council to consider the Waterworks Amendment Bill